The unexpected election of Donald Trump as President of the United States, stunning to the media and foreign governments, makes us focus on U.S.-China relations. China is often bashed a bit in U.S. elections, but Trump took it to a new level as he has made repatriating jobs to the U.S. a major part of his appeal. Obviously, there are many questions, many concerns about a Trump presidency. But in my opinion, China-U.S. relations needs to be high on the agenda. The U.S. is almost evenly divided, viscerally as well as politically. I see the division in my own family. But we cannot afford to get U.S.-China relations wrong. The stability and prosperity of both countries are at stake, along with that of the rest of the world. When charismatic New York real estate businessman Donald Trump steps into the Oval Office, people expect him to differ from his predecessors, perhaps dramatically. For a start, the billionaire-turned-reality TV star has never run for office, and that makes his policies hard to predict, especially his foreign policy. Across the Pacific, Chinese people have mixed feelings over Trump's victory.
Hillary is quite fake. She brought a lot of trouble to the China-U.S. relations in the past. But Trump is a businessman, so he's more pragmatic and he's straightforward.
I don't think Trump is reliable. I've got the feeling that there is going to be chaos in the U.S. under his presidency. He's a political outsider, not professional enough to run the country.
Trump is a successful businessman, so I think he is able to help improve the bilateral trade. You don't know what exactly Trump is thinking about. He's a businessman, not a politician.
As an old Chinese saying goes, looking to history, one foresees destiny. Even though Trump has not developed his overall policy toward China, he has played the China card during his long campaign for the White House, focusing on bringing back American jobs.
They use their smartest, toughest, meanest people. We use dumb people. We use hacks. I've done a lot of business with China. I think China's great. I've done great. I've made a lot of money with China. You take a look at what's happening to steel and the cost of steel, and China dumping vast amounts of steel all over the United States, which essentially is killing our steel workers and our steel companies. We have to guard our energy companies.
Trump is known to be a pragmatist, a fast learner, and quick to take advantage of opportunities. In order to win, he could change his stance overnight. So how much of what he has said on China will be carried into the White House, and what Trump's presidency means to Sino-U.S. relations is still anyone's guess. I discussed China's reaction to President-elect Trump with two thought leaders, Ambassador Zhou Enjong, China's ambassador to the United States, 2005 to 2010. He is now Secretary General of the BOA Forum for Asia. And Professor Huang Ping. He is president of the Chinese Association of American Studies. Professor Huang, were you as surprised as I was to see President-elect Donald Trump?
Definitely yes. Even I have said during the BRICS that this year's most uncertainty was not the BRICS, but the U.S. election.
Ambassador Zhou, it's good to see you again. We have interesting times in which we live. You've been following China-U.S. relations for a long time, ambassador to the U.S. 2005, 2010. You've seen ups and downs and twists and turns. Were you as surprised as I was to see the election of Donald Trump?
It is a surprise. I think it will be a surprise to many people. But what happened?
How is China reacting to this? I mean, it's soon and it's quick, but what are some of the initial reactions in China?
I think the message sent to Trump by the president, our president, was very warm a message, and it also is expression of China's expectations for the new relationship from a new start.
Yeah, so it's interesting from President Xi Jinping was very carefully written in terms of its presentation. It was to further forward the relations and from this new start. So let's just analyze that word. To further forward means?
My understanding is this, because it's been a agreement between China and the previous administration. That is, the two of them will both work to develop a new type or new model of sort of a major powers relationship, meaning a relationship of mutual respect and mutual beneficial and cooperation, and there will be neither conflict or confrontation. And so the wording was repeated in the message, but the sort of the code name, so to speak, of it was not in it, because it would take the new administration and the Chinese government to agree that they would continue that consensus, work on that consensus.
So let's go back to the consensus, and that is a new type of major power relationship. Right. was the understanding.
Yeah, was the agreement. Yes.
Between President Xi and President Obama. Yet in the American media, the American diplomatic establishment, that term probably had different interpretations, which is often what U.S. and China will do is they have a phrase and each is allowed to interpret it in its own way to deal with its own domestic issues. Is that fair comment?
But I think actually it's good for both China and the United States if we are able to reach that goal. And the goal is that we should have a relationship of one, there is neither conflict or confrontation, and it will be one of mutually beneficial, and also it will be there will be one of cooperation, increasing cooperation.
Okay, so from that base, though, with the additional comment that President Xi sent, that we're doing this from this new start. Mm-hmm. So how do we interpret? Because we've said that before. That's in place. This new type of major power relationship may be interpreted differently in both
new
cases.
Start, I think, because it's a new administration.
Okay.
And in the past, it happened. The new administration, particularly if it's a new administration of a different party, okay, would not, sort of continue or carry on the commitment made by the previous administration. So it happened before.
You are one of the leaders as a scholar in the academic world, but as an advisor to the many of the foreign policy issues that occur as an expert on America. So among the elites, the scholars, the diplomats with whom you talk, what were the prior attitudes towards Trump?
I think first, for most of us researchers about U.S. or China-U.S. relations, foreign policies towards U.S. or U.S. foreign policies towards China, we knew the Democratic parties and Obama's team, Hillary's team, her past, her policies, either Secretary of the State. So we are quite familiar with even those people in her or Obama's team. But we had no idea about Trump and his team. Therefore, except from his wordings during the campaign, we had also an idea about actually what might be his real policies, not only towards China, towards the world, towards the market, towards the economy, trade, all of those. So we also feel quite a kind of challenge, uncertain, when the result was.
On the one hand, as you've said, the Clinton policy, the people behind her, so you would have a very high certainty of what policies would be in every area: trade, international relations, human rights, territoriality, Taiwan, all the issues of America-China relations. And on the other hand, you have no idea what Trump has, and sometimes Trump doesn't have that much of idea himself because he hasn't focused on some of these things other than trade and jobs. So that would say, because China, as far as capital markets are, so concerned about stability and certainty, that uncertainty is a real negative. So in that sense, you would probably favor Clinton because you have certainty and you have uncertainty, because uncertainty is always a big negative. Was that a factor? We know Clinton, we don't know Trump, and therefore, even though we may not like some of the things Clinton has done or said or whatever, at least we know how to deal with that.
I think, let me say, we definitely would rather prefer certainty, stability, continuity.
Yeah.
Instead of anything uncertain, you don't know how to work or how to deal with it, therefore what may happen next.
Right.
So that is, I think, the same for others.
Sure. I mean, capital markets are that way.
Indeed.
Each new administration likes to do something different than the past to show that they're smarter, better, able to handle things more. So which of the areas in U.S.-China relations can the new administration make a difference in a positive way, more than the previous administration?
I think they may call it differently, but I think in essence, there should be continuity. And the continuity is something that matters. So we hope there will be continuity, clear continuity in this relationship. Yeah.
All major institutions of the world value continuity. Business, capital markets all put a very high value on stability and continuity. China actually has even a higher degree of importance that it looks to for continuity. So stability, continuity is exceedingly important for China domestically and indeed in the international markets and all the things that China does. So how can a Trump administration help with that continuity?
Our advice, my personal advice would be, hope he will carry on the agreements already reached. For instance, there have been mechanisms, a number of mechanisms between the two countries. So I think, for instance, the three commissions between China and the United States. One is about strategic and economic dialogue, and one about the humanities, and one about science and technology, and so I hope all these commitment, the commissions, joint commissions, would continue to work and adopt a new agenda, which would be very important for China and the United States.
So the continuity of the three commissions would be a signal that continuity is respected in terms of the bilateral relations.
Yeah, and also the three joint communiques.
Yeah, well, that's
which are very important
foundation
of
that's
right of U.S.-China relations.
Right. So maybe
reaffirm all these principles. The principles carried out in all these joint communiques.
So first, Trump has to study them and find out what they are. Given Trump's history of inconsistency in policy, if he did come out with some positive prescriptions for U.S.-China relations, would the Chinese government give it as much credibility than if Hillary Clinton would have said it, because they know that she has a history of political stability in her policies?
I think we will deal with him not as an individual, because he now represents the United States. He's the president of the United States. So we're dealing with him, actually we're dealing with the United States and the U.S. government. So I think he understands this. So he will be, I think you will see changes in his style. That's my guess.
After Donald Trump won the U.S. presidential election, he received a congratulatory message from China's President Xi Jinping. In the message, Xi said he looks forward to work with Trump to push China relations further forward from a new starting point. Xi emphasized that both countries bear the special responsibility to maintain world peace and stability and to enhance global development and prosperity. While China is the world's largest developing country, and the United States is the world's largest developed power, both, as the world's top two economies, share extensive interests. Since establishing diplomatic relations in 1979, China and the U.S. have witnessed substantial progress in their relations, notwithstanding occasional obstacles. The two countries issued the joint communique of the People's Republic of China and the United States of America on February 29, 1972. The joint communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations between the People's Republic of China and the United States of America on December 16, 1978, and the August 17th joint communique of 1982. China always states that these three joint communiques are the foundation for China and the U.S. to develop stable, sound, and normal bilateral relations. But there have been conflicts between conflicting interests, such as on Taiwan, the South China Sea, human rights, currency, and trade. Donald Trump is famous for not playing by old rules. People in China wonder whether he will respect China's core interests. If you were still ambassador in Washington, and you've been very active since, so you're in touch with Americans all the time, if you were there and Trump called you with his team and say, look, you know my position, give me some private advice. I'm not going to talk to anybody else about it, but I really would like to know what you recommend I do. I may not listen to you, but I'd like to know very candidly, very specifically, what I should do.
There have been, three communiques between China and the United States. Yeah. And also there's been an agreement with regard to the new type of major country relationship. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we hope all these agreements reached between China and the previous administrations will be carried on. And also on this basis, there will be new development.
Are there any areas that you think are particularly sensitive that Trump should be aware of as he's beginning this process in terms of U.S.-China relations?
Bilaterally, of course, hope he will handle the question of Taiwan very carefully. Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly with what's going on in Taiwan. Yeah.
Now, on the bilateral investment treaty, this has been talked about every time President Obama met President Xi. People hoped it would be ratified, but everybody says, we're making progress.
Slower than we thought.
Yeah, but the fact is that if it wasn't going too well because they never did do it, and it would have been great for the two presidents to do it. So there are obviously, areas. My thought is that with the new situation now, that the flexibility on both sides, I think there's a new opportunity because Trump will bring in fresh thinking, and I think China needs to reciprocate on that in terms of its own markets. And the timing is better for China today in terms of deepening reform than it would have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes, I think if you go back a little bit, say 2, 3 years ago, at that time we thought BIT could be easier than an agreement between U.S. and China on climate change.
Oh, wow.
But actually it's the opposite.
Reverse, yeah.
Of course, since after Donald Trump as a president maybe changed to then climate change deal was put aside.
I don't know where climate change goes.
BIT could go further.
That's right.
Yeah, quicker.
I think that's a good analysis, that Trump will be much more likely to do a business deal that'll benefit the economy than worry about climate change.
Indeed. By the way, you definitely know we have been also working with Republican administrations since Nixon. And I think, true or not, but basically Chinese feel in terms of such real issues, real problems, challenges, including difficulties between us, to a certain extent it's easier to work with Republican administrations.
That's very interesting. Expound for me on that, why that's the case.
Since Mao, not only Tang, even Mao clearly said to President Nixon. Yeah. I think maybe greatly because the Republicans, even they are also very different from one to another, are more realistic than idealistic. And in terms of international relations, if you only go from your so-called ideology, it will be very hard because China is a socialist country, it's a communist party, and Americans are completely different. Yeah. We always talk about the relationship from our old ideologies, it would be so difficult.
If you trace the Republican Party history, it's actually very interesting in this regard. Classically, it had a big division in it where you had the realists in the Republican Party and big business favoring China.
Yeah.
But you then had another sector, which is the old line conservatives, who were sort of the anti-communists,
Yes.
which were,
Taiwan,
seems anachronism today,
Yes.
from the 1950s or 60s times.
Yeah.
But they still had some force in the party. The oddity today is that Trump is not part of any tradition there.
No.
I mean, he is his own
He's a
tradition,
Soviet,
and it's very focused economically in how he thinks. So, and with the majorities that the Republicans have, and most of them are now the realists, and with Trump being business, I mean, that gives you some fertile area for opportunity. I think what we also must do, though, is to look at areas of potential threat. Problems, and to look at ahead of time. We want to believe the opportunities there economically, and I think there are, but let's look candidly at the threat. We don't know who are going to be his advisors. There are still people in the Republican Party who take a very hard line to
China.
to China from not so much an ideological point of view and the idealism, but from a kind of a real-world confrontational point of view.
Or traditional geopolitics.
Traditional geopolitics, zero-sum game, military alliances, military boundaries, etc. And so we don't know, but we may find Trump not interested in those areas, and therefore other people leave it to others, and there's a potential danger in there. So you have and leadership in China has to prepare for that. Are you thinking about that?
Yes, I think first, even in economies, Trump cares so much. We should still work very hard to avoid kind of competition for lose-lose. Because each country, both US, China, and many others nowadays, have suffered from the much slower growth or negative growth. Therefore, any country naturally will be more sort of inward-looking, less sort of opening, kind of trade, both trade and investment protectionism is everywhere. So if Trump cares so much about its own economy, its own jobs, its own benefits, interests, growth, there could be also, even in economy, we discuss the potential opportunities, but depending on how we work.
It is certainly true that in this campaign, some of the traditional issues of human rights and other things were not there. But what was there, certainly from Trump more so, was in his attack of American policy in the past in terms of trade policies all over the world, whether it's Mexico or China or Japan or all over the world, that he believes that America has gotten, quote, bad deals in economic deals. So his focus was very much on American jobs and a criticism of globalization. And in that, he has certainly singled out China as a big problem for the U.S., although he doesn't blame China. In a sense, he praises China. He says they're smarter than we are, criticizing the previous generation. So he says, I don't blame the Chinese. I think they're doing great for their country, but we're getting hurt in our country. That's been his argument. And so now that he has the responsibility, we don't know what he's going to do.
That is a concern of many of the people in the world. The concern about the trend, of his policy. I mean, his trade policy. So we see sort of protectionism, in his words concerning trade. So, I mean, the concern is that would he sort of develop a policy of trade which would be protectionist in character or in nature? And if that's the case, what would it mean for the trade partners of the United States? But I think actually, everyone, including the United States, has benefited a great deal from the increased world trade. And the difficulty is that how that the benefit should be shared, among people in the United States. But that's a problem which you need to sort out by yourselves. He was charging the big companies to move the headquarters overseas and keep the profit overseas without taking it home and so forth. So I think that's a problem with the big companies of the United States.
Yeah, the danger again is that if Trump so concentrates on domestic affairs and takes very little interest in the traditional alliances or approaches, that other countries will feel insecure, and that creates for more instability wherever they go. And different countries may make different decisions, alliances may start forming between different people, and that's clearly not in China's best interest. China needs more than almost any other country a stable international environment to enable its dramatic industrial transformation, which will take decades, not just a 5-year plan. It's going to take many, many 5-year plans to complete a full transformation and reindustrialization.
Another 35 years.
So the goal is 2050, and that's a realistic goal, but still it may not even be then. Maybe the end of the whole century. Because it's a big challenge, and China cannot afford an unstable world. And some American foreign policy analysts who are against Trump think that he's completely unaware of what will happen, even though he only wants to concentrate on protect the U.S., that if he does that, the world will become unstable because all different countries will be planning their own things. If he doesn't defend NATO against Russia in the perception, then maybe Germany and France will start developing nuclear weapons or developing them because they don't trust the U.S. anymore. So there's a lot of opportunity for instability that we all have to be concerned about.
Therefore, I think for U.S.-China relations, we should also go beyond the only bilateral, but the regional and global. We have to also work together for the world poverty, development, polarization, unequal distribution of wealth, problem in the Middle East, in Africa, in other parts of the world, so uncertainties, crisis, and therefore how the big countries should be, say, responsible stakeholders.
Donald Trump has a motto, now famous: "Make America Great Again." I believe he means it. But his greatness for America does not depend on absolute ideologies. And in his victorious overturning of much of the American elite, he is not beholden to any interest group. Trump has been known to change his position in the same week, sometimes in the same interview. While I understand why he has been castigated for his lack of consistent positions, he has said that such flexibility gives him strength. And here, he is not necessarily wrong. And this flexibility may facilitate U.S.-China relations. I believe, or I hope, that Trump's pragmatism to put America first will lead to a constructive engagement with China. Trump will be pulled in all directions by those who got him elected. But Trump is his own man. He will define what it takes to make America great again, and I think he will see, what many of us see, that China and the United States will either succeed together or fail together. This is not a zero-sum game. We both win or we both lose. But China will also have to play its part. Chinese policymakers have an opportunity to change the old rules, see China-U.S. relations with sophistication and nuance. Trump, above all, wants to be a winner. So China and the U.S. can redefine what it means for both countries to win. We'll be watching, keeping closer to China.